July 6, 1941. The outskirts of Senno, Belarus. The air inside the Panzer III is a suffocating mixture of sweat, stale tobacco, and the acrid, metallic taste of heated oil. It is the height of the Russian summer, and the dust is inescapable. It coats the throat, stings the eyes, and turns the field gray uniforms of the 17th Panzer Division into ghosts of the Belarusian steppe. Gunner Hans Weber wipes a grime-streaked hand across his brow, pressing his eye back to the telescopic sight. The mood inside the turret is high, almost manic. For weeks, the Wehrmacht has been slicing through the Soviet Union like a scalpel through rotten fruit. The Red Army is in disarray. Their tanks, the obsolete T-26s and BT-7s, have been popping open like tin cans under the precision fire of the German 15 kW K-38 guns. "Target at 11 o'clock, the commander, Lieutenant Muller, calls out. His voice crackles over the intercom, not with alarm, but with a bored familiarity. More Russian junk coming out. Of the tree line, range 800 meters. Hans traverses the turret. Through the optics, the heat haze shimmers, warping the shapes of the approaching enemy vehicles. They look different. They are low to the ground, distinctively sloped, with wide tracks that seem to float over the soft earth rather than dig into it. They lack the boxy, vertical architecture of the German tanks or the riveted, primitive look of the usual Soviet armor. "What is that?" the loader asks, squinting through the vision slit. "Looks like a tractor with a turret welded on." Laughter erupts in the cramped steel box. It's a common joke among the crews. The Russians are desperate, throwing anything with an engine into the grinder. To the men of the 17th Panzer, this is just another target practice session. Another iron cross to send home, another kilometer closer to Moscow. "Armor piercing. Load," Muller orders, a smirk audible in his voice. "Let's knock on the door and see who's home." The loader slams the 15 shell into the breech. The breech block snaps shut with a reassuring metallic clack. Hans centers the crosshairs on the lead Russian tank. It's moving fast, surprisingly fast for its size, churning up a wake of black earth. But it's a perfect shot, the center of mass, the hull. On the way, Hans yells and squeezes the trigger. The Panzer III bucks violently as the cannon roars. The smell of cordite floods the turret immediately. Through the sight, Hans watches the tracer streak across the gap, a line of fire connecting predator and prey. He expects the usual result, a flash of impact, a shower of sparks, and the enemy tank shuddering to a halt, followed by smoke billowing from a cracked hull. The shell hits dead center on the frontal armor. But there is no explosion. There is no shattered steel. Instead, Hans sees a bright, violent spark fly upwards into the sky. The tracer deflects wildly, spinning off into the clouds like a Roman candle. "Ricochet?" Muller asks the boredom. Vanishing instantly. "You hit it at a bad angle, Hans. Adjust." "I hit it square, Lieutenant." Hans protests, his hands slick on the controls. "Right in the chest." "Load again," fires. The loader shoves another round in. Hans fires. Again the Panzer kicks. Again the shell screams across the steppe. It strikes the turret of the oncoming beast this time, and again the laws of physics seem to suspend themselves. The shell doesn't penetrate. It simply bounces off the curved steel cheek of the Russian tank, skipping away harmlessly. The laughter in the turret dies instantly. The temperature seems to drop despite the sweltering heat. The Russian tank hasn't slowed down. It hasn't even acknowledged the hit. It is now closing the distance, its long 76-gun barrel lowering, searching, hunting. And for the first time since crossing the border, Hans Weber feels the cold, distinct grip of fear in his gut. The tractor isn't stopping, and the German army, the master of blitzkrieg, has just punched it in the jaw, only to break its own hand. "Driver, reverse," Muller screams, his voice cracking. "Get us out of." The command is cut short by the thunderous roar of the Soviet tanks' return fire. The world outside turns into a blinding flash of orange and black. The shell from the T-34 screams past the turret of Hans's Panzer III, missing them by inches. The displacement of air alone rattles the optics in their sockets, but the tank to their right isn't so lucky. Hans watches through the vision block, paralyzed, as the neighboring Panzer III, commanded by his friend Schmidt, takes the 76 high-explosive round directly in the ammunition storage. The detonation is instantaneous. The turret is lifted cleanly off the hull, spinning in the air like a tossed coin before crashing down into the dirt, wreathed in oily flames. "Back, back!" Muller is screaming, kicking the back of the driver's seat. The Panzer III lurches backward, gears grinding in protest, tracks slipping in. The loose soil. But the horror is only just beginning on the ground. 200 meters ahead, concealed in a cluster of birch trees, Unteroffizier Klaus Becker wipes mud from the breech of his 3.7 cm Panzer 36 anti-tank gun. His crew is dug in, camouflaged with netting and branches. They are the infantry's shield, the tank hunters. Up until today, this gun has been enough. Against the Polish tankettes and the light French armor, the 37 shell was a death sentence. "Tank at 12 o'clock, range 400, his spotter yells, voice trembling. Klaus looks down the sights. The monster is lumbering straight toward them. It moves with a terrifying, inexorable weight. The diesel engine roars like a dying dragon, spewing black exhaust that mixes with the dust. Through the lens, Klaus sees the sloped front plate. It's angled back at a sharp 60 degrees. To an engineer, it's a brilliant geometric solution to increase effective armor thickness. To Klaus, it looks like the face of a shark. "Armor!" Piercing fire, Klaus bellows. The gun cracks. The recoil digs the spades deeper into the Belarusian earth. The crew watches the tracer streak out, a deadly line of white phosphorus. Ping! The sound is sickeningly light. It's not the heavy crunch of penetrating metal. It's a high-pitched, mocking ring like a hammer striking an anvil. The shell hits the sloped glacis plate of the T-34, skids upwards, and disappears into the sky. "It bounced," the loader screams, his eyes wide white discs in a face caked with dirt. "It just bounced off." "Load again, aim for the turret ring, the neck," Klaus commands, forcing steadiness into his voice that he doesn't feel. The loader jams another shell in. The T-34 is closer now, 300 meters. The ground is shaking. The vibrations travel up through Klaus's boots and into his teeth. He can see the mud flying off the wide tracks. These tracks are wider than anything on a German tank, allowing the 30-ton beast to float over the soft ground where the German trucks are already getting stuck. Crack! The second shell hits the turret. Again, the sparks shower harmlessly. The T-34 doesn't even slow down. It doesn't even turn its gun toward them. It ignores them. This is the ultimate insult. The Russian crew inside knows they are invulnerable. They know the standard German anti-tank gun, the backbone of the Wehrmacht's infantry defense, is useless against them. "It's a door knocker," the spotter screams, using the grim nickname that will soon spread across the entire Eastern Front. "Hirasanklopfjuret, the army door knocker." They are politely knocking on the door, but no one is letting them in. "Tungsten," Klaus yells, reaching for the rare, precious supply of PZGR-40 rounds, dense cores designed for heavy armor. "Give me the tungsten." He fumbles the round into the breech. The tank is at 100 meters. The roar of its engine drowns out all thought. The massive steel hull fills the entire site. Klaus fires. The tungsten round strikes the driver's hatch. It leaves a gouge, a glowing scar on the steel, but it does not go through. The T-34 is now 50 meters away, and it isn't stopping. "Run," Klaus screams. "Abandon the gun, run." The crew scrambles out of the foxhole, abandoning their weapon just seconds before the T-34 reaches the line. Klaus dives into a drainage ditch, covering his head with his hands, curling into a ball as the shadow of the tank passes over him. The sound is apocalyptic, metal shrieking against metal. The T drives directly over the Panzer 36. The weight of the tank crushes the anti-tank gun into the dirt, bending the barrel like a twig, flattening the wheels, and grinding the optical sights into dust. Klaus looks up from the ditch, gasping for air. He watches the T-34 continue on, its rear exhaust ports coughing smoke. Behind it, the crushed remains of his gun lie in the mud, a symbol of the new reality. The Wehrmacht, the unstoppable force that conquered Europe, has suddenly found itself, bringing a knife to a gunfight. Around him, the infantry is breaking. Men who have marched victorious through Paris and Warsaw are throwing down their rifles and running. Panic, infectious and deadly, sweeps through the lines. The radio in the command post is screaming with reports from all sectors. It's the same story everywhere. Shells bouncing off, cannot penetrate, overrun. The blitzkrieg has hit a steel wall, and the wall is moving forward. November 18, 1941. 2nd Panzer Army Forward HQ near Tula. The heat and dust of July have vanished, replaced by a biting, wet cold that seeps through the heaviest greatcoats. The Russian winter is arriving early, and the mud, the infamous Rasputitsa, has turned the roads into glue that swallows trucks whole. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, the father of the blitzkrieg, stands in a farmyard clearing, staring at a ghost. It is a captured T-34 dragged back from the front lines by a recovery team. It sits motionless in the gray light, covered in grime, a red star faintly visible on the turret. To the uneducated eye, it looks crude. The welds are rough, unfinished. The casting on the turret looks like textured oatmeal compared to the smooth, machined finish of a German Panzer. But Guderian isn't looking at the finish. He's looking at the geometry. He pulls off a leather glove and runs a hand over the front glacis plate. The steel is icy to the touch, but the angle is undeniable. 60 degrees, Guderian mutters, his breath clouding in the freezing air. Oberst Lang measure it again. Colonel Lang, his aide, steps forward with a protractor and a grim expression. He places it against the cold armor. It's exactly 60 degrees, Herr Generaloberst, the effective thickness. It doubles against horizontal flight paths. A 45 plate acts like 90. Guderian walks around the side of the tank. He kicks the track. It doesn't clang, it thuds. Look at the width, Lang, 500 millimeters, hour. Panzers are driving on ice skates compared to this snowshoe. This is the crisis that has been keeping Guderian awake. His panzers, the pride of the Reich, the machines that conquered France in 6 weeks, are drowning in the Russian mud. Their narrow tracks dig them into graves, while this Soviet machine floats on top. He climbs up the hull, his boots slipping on the wet steel. He peers into the open driver's hatch. The interior is cramped, smelling of diesel and unwashed humanity. But there lies another shock. Diesel, Guderian says, loud enough for the gathering officers to hear. An aluminum alloy diesel engine. We are still using gasoline. A murmur goes through the staff officers. Gasoline catches fire easily. A single hit turns a German tank into a crematorium. Diesel is harder to ignite, giving the Russian crews a chance to escape. But the transmission is garbage, General, a younger Hauptmann interjects, trying to salvage some pride. To shift gears, the driver practically needs a hammer. The sights are primitive. There is no radio for the commander. Guderian drops down from the hull, landing heavily in the mud. He turns on the young officer, his eyes hard. Does it matter, Hauptmann? Guderian snaps. Does it matter if the driver needs a hammer when his tank can destroy ours from 1,000 meters, and we must close to 300 just to scratch his paint? Does it matter if the radio is missing when they outnumber us 10 to 1 and can move through mud that immobilizes us? Silence falls over the farmyard. The arrogance of the summer is gone. The racial theories of the Reich claimed the Slavic people were subhuman, incapable of sophisticated engineering. Yet here stands a machine that is, in the trinity of tank design, firepower, protection, and mobility, superior to anything Germany possesses. We have a problem, Guderian says, his voice low. I have sent a report to the Armament Ministry. I told them bluntly, the T-34 is the best tank in the world. What is the solution, General? Lang asks. Do we upgun the Panzer IV? Guderian shakes his head, looking back at the T-34 one last time. The snow is starting to fall harder now, settling on the sloped armor, sliding off just as the shells do. Upgunning is a bandage on a severed limb, Guderian replies. I have proposed something radical, something the Führer will hate. He pauses, watching the snow accumulate on the wide tracks. We must copy it. We must build a German T-34, swallow our pride, reverse engineer this beast, and turn it against them. If we don't, the Panzer arm is dead. He turns his back on the captured tank and walks toward his command car. "Get the commission here from Berlin," he orders. "Daimler-Benz, man, Henschel, get them all out here. Let them touch this steel. Let them see what they are up against before the winter buries us all." July 5, 1943, the northern flank of the Kursk salient. 2 years have passed since the shock at Senno. The landscape has changed, scarred by millions of shells, but the dust of the Russian summer remains the same. Hans Weber is no longer a gunner in a cramped Panzer III. He is now a Feldwebel, a platoon commander, standing in the cupola of Germany's answer to the T-34 crisis, the Panzer V Panther. He runs a hand along the inside of the hatch. The design lineage is unmistakable. The vertical, boxy plates of the early war are gone. The Panther is sleek, menacing, and crucially sloped. The hull front is angled back at 55 degrees, a direct homage to the terror they faced in 1941. The tracks are wide, designed to float over the earth just like their Soviet counterparts. "Target front, T-34s massing at the tree line," his gunner shouts. Hans peers through his periscope. There they are, the same silhouette that haunted his nightmares, but this time the dynamic has shifted. "Range 1,800 meters, the gunner calls out. In 1941, this range would have been a joke. A Panzer III would have been helpless, but the Panther carries the KWK-42, a 75 cannon with a barrel so long it looks like a lance. It spits shells at velocities that turn air into a shockwave. "Fire," Hans commands. The gun roars. The suspension rocks gently, a smooth, heavy recoil compared to the violent buck of the lighter tanks. Through the optics, Hans watches the tracer vanish into the distance. Nearly 2 kilometers away, a T-34 explodes. The high-velocity shell slices through the Soviet armor as if it were paper. The door knocker, days remain a bitter memory. The Wehrmacht finally has a hammer. "Hit, target destroyed. Next target, traverse right." For a moment, it feels like victory. The Panther is a technological marvel born from the humiliation of the past. It is the physical manifestation of the German refusal to be out-engineered. They have taken the T's greatest strength, its geometry, and refined it with German optics and firepower. But as the engagement drags on, a new warning light flickers on the dashboard. "Engine temp is rising, Feldwebel," the driver yells over the intercom. "Oil pressure dropping." Hans curses. "Keep moving, we can't stop here." "I can't, the transmission. It's slipping. I think the final drive is shearing." Smoke begins to curl not from enemy fire, but from the rear deck of the Panther itself. The rush to production, the desperate need to get these tanks to the front to counter the T-34, has come at a cost. The Panther was rushed from the drawing board to the battlefield without finishing its trials. The engine is overburdened. The transmission is fragile. As the Panther grinds to a halt, turning into a stationary pillbox, Hans watches another T-34 in the distance. It is crude. It is roughly welded. It lacks the sophisticated optics and the comfortable seats of the Panther. But it is moving. It is reliable, and there are thousands of them. Hans realizes the bitter truth as he orders his crew to bail out of their overheating machine. They have copied the T-34's armor. They have copied its tracks. But they could not copy the one thing that truly mattered, its ability to just keep running. The T-34 did more than just bounce shells in 1941. It forced the German war machine to panic. It forced them to over-engineer a solution that, while deadly, is breaking down under its own weight. As Hans jumps from the deck of his smoking Panther, he looks out across the steppe. The horizon is filled with the roar of Soviet engines. The T-34s are advancing, their sloped armor glinting in the sun, driving over the wreckage of the superior, broken machines built to destroy them. The shock of the T-34 has ended. The era of the main battle tank has begun. But for the Wehrmacht, the lesson arrived too late.